Saw this on Reddit, let's check it out. Post titled, Square Enix removed from Sweet Baby Inc.'s list of client companies. One top comment saying, hopefully not just hiding to avoid bad clout. Response saying, we'll see. Whatever they release next, the credits will have to include SBI if they're still affiliated. However, another one says Square Enix doesn't need SBI. They have their own in-house ethics department in charge of similar duties already. Yet another one claims that they're switching to Hit Detection, which is another consultation company, saying because SBI's name is now way too toxic for them to be associated with. Now, even if that is the case, it's still interesting that people are avoiding Sweet Baby Inc. We'll return to some of the Square Enix stuff because there's more to say on all that. But first, let's briefly go over some of the recent occurrences that have been very bad for SBI. You may have seen my video from the other day where I talked about this former Sweet Baby Inc. employee who essentially said that he's losing out on work because devs are seeing that he was affiliated with Sweet Baby Inc. and they're using that as justification not to hire him. A few months ago, there was also this situation. Daedalic community manager for game Capes put out a statement regarding working with Sweet Baby Inc. in 2022, mentions that the decision would have been a different one in 2024. So that basically implies that they regret working with Sweet Baby Inc. Now, let me give you some more context on this situation real quick. So it became public attention to the gaming community that this game Capes was affiliated with SBI, having worked with them as mentioned back in 2022 apparently. And so they were getting a ton of backlash for this. They made some like wishy-washy statements here and there, according to my recollection at least. And then ultimately this community manager makes this conclusive statement about SBI as mentioned. Here's the full statement if you want to read it for yourself. Allow me to just skip to the part where they sort of distance themselves from SBI. They say, quote, why did you still work together with them after all they said, on quote. Response being, the devs collaborated with SBI in early 2022. We are aware of the statements being done by individuals connected to SBI in the years to come, but in 2022 there was no sign of that. It is likely that the decision would have been a different one in 2024. Now, in the responses, they still got a lot of backlash for this statement too. Still, it is rather interesting that they were kind of distancing themselves from SBI here. That plus the recent news of that Sweet Baby Inc. employee apparently not being able to find work because devs don't want to deal with him in SBI. And now the more recent news of Square Enix also distancing themselves from Sweet Baby Inc. And whatever the reasons may be for Square Enix, at the very least, none of this stuff looks good for SBI. Now, speaking about Square Enix once again, I did mention earlier that there were a few more things in that thread I wanted to take a look at. For example, this comment reading, problem is there's dozens of those activist groups, more like Black Girl Gamers. They're like Al-Qaeda terror cells, popping up under new names. There is a lot of consultancy firms like Sweet Baby Inc. However, a lot of them do already exist. They're not just like popping up, they're already there. And similar to Sweet Baby Inc., a lot of them are also based out of Canada, and many of them even indirectly get funding from the Canadian government. That's all something I plan on covering much more thoroughly in the future, in its own separate video. For now, there's still amusement to be had out of this entire SBI Square Enix situation. The comment that we just read got this response that reads, true, but there's only so much money to go around, and activism DEI is a plague on the industry. Now that there are real financial drawbacks to hiring these consultants, there will hopefully be a shift. At the very least, they can no longer market themselves easily, since adding their name to the credits will hurt sales. It really is amusing, seeing how this entire DEI con has been backfiring so much recently. So many of these corpos, whether we're talking about these consultancy firms, or even going back to like gaming journalism and how certain outlets clearly employ people who hate gamers and hate gaming and just write a bunch of inflammatory nonsensical articles bashing gamers. But yeah, so many of them are now losing tons of money. Whole thing is falling apart. Unfortunately, some of them still have pockets that run rather deep from their backseat investors, or even in some cases the government. Still, it certainly seems like it's not going as well for them as it used to. Do you remember that other situation I talked about recently with that so-called nonprofit Take This, who claims to be in support of mental health in gaming or something of the sort, but made a very inflammatory post defending Sweet Baby Inc., essentially saying that they're against harassment and bigotry, but mentioning literally nothing about the harassment and bigotry that's been coming from Sweet Baby Inc. employees. They came off extremely insincere. I had a lot more to say about all that, and that's why I made a whole video on that topic. I'm not going to repeat the whole thing here. The point is, and why I bring it up now, is because they also said, Take This is in danger of closing forever. We need $80,000 by 9/30. And that's after they already asked for $200,000 funding by June of the same year. And just a year or two before that, they had already seemingly received nearly $700,000 in grant money from the United States government. But oh no, it's not enough. They still need even more money. In my prior coverage, I also analyzed the services that they offer, and in my opinion, as I mentioned before, none of this stuff adds up. It really looks like they're mismanaging stuff and potentially some of that money, most of the money maybe, was just going back into their own pockets. Despite how clearly shady the organization looks, that didn't stop activist news site Bleeding Cool from writing an article about how Take This really needs your help, you gotta give them money. And their own article inadvertently gives even more evidence to what I'm already saying. Let's take a look, where they say, a nonprofit in the gaming industry is looking for financial help to keep its doors open, as Take This has sent out a plea for aid before the end of September. If you're not familiar with their work, Take This has been around for over a decade, serving as a mental health support organization that provides resources and support specific to the needs of the game development community. It's funny how they say that they help out with a number of issues within gaming development, but give literally no examples of such actually being the case. Instead, down below in just a moment, they cite one of their so-called biggest projects, where they say one of their biggest projects that they have helped with is the AFK room at PAX West, a quiet area where all electronics are turned off and people can recoup after being bombarded by the convention's sights and sounds, or just to escape the crowded walkways of a packed convention. So I apologize if you heard my prior coverage on this and you hear me repeating myself now, but I'm sure you understand why I'm pointing this out again. I mean, this is just frankly absurd. What they're describing is essentially what many conventions already have as a so-called quiet room, which is as they described. Like, if you want to break from the noise of the convention, you can go there, everyone's got to be quiet, etc., etc. Although some of the ones I have seen do allow you to be on your electronics, they just can't have sounds on. You know, you can't talk on the phone either, stuff like that. My point is, this is a very simple thing to set up. Literally any convention can just assign some room in the space that they're renting or whatever the agreement is, and be like, hey, that's going to be our quiet room. They really don't need Take This to organize such a thing for them. And to say that Take This really needs your money, and they spent all this money over the years, and this is one of their biggest achievements is these AFK rooms, like, you've got to be kidding me. As mentioned, in my opinion, this stuff doesn't add up at all, and it's clearly shady looking, but go figure that some activist news site will prop this organization up and try and get people to give them money. Once again, even after the government's funded them via a grant. And just as a reminder, yes, this does tie in with Sweet Baby Inc. because this organization, Take This, did put out that aforementioned blog post overtly defending SBI. It's just crazy to me how many corrupt organizations are out there and how often journalists or activists go out of their way to defend them. Icing on the cake is that they also often have this like holier than thou attitude about the whole thing. Oh, hey guys, this is a really good cause. You're going to be a great person, wink wink. Just give your money to me and give your money to them. So rolling it all the way back to the beginning, Square Enix removed from Sweet Baby Inc.'s list of client companies. Also might be losing their defenders over at Take This if they end up shutting down. Employees over at Sweet Baby Inc. are having a difficult time finding jobs elsewhere because devs don't want to deal with them and all that it means dealing with them and their SBI affiliation. And some games, like Capes, seem to openly have community managers suggesting that they regret having worked with the consultation firm. All in all, I'd say things are certainly looking up for gamers this year, especially near the latter half. I mean, I don't think I need to mention this again, but we also recently had that whole Concord situation and Dustborn, and of course earlier in the year there was SBI Case the JL, you know what I mean, hopefully. Now I'm not saying things are perfect now, but again, I mean, it at least looks like things are getting better. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. As always, thank you for tuning in, and I do hope you enjoyed my coverage, and if you did, please also consider liking and or subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.